Hello, everyone. My name is Bryan Vermes. He, him are my pronouns, and I'm our vice president of our board at Pride in Our Workplace. And I want to thank you for taking a few minutes out of your busy work week to join us today for our event. I'm pleased to be able to be participating in this event with Jean Dolin today. We're going to have a fantastic conversation on how we can leverage our networks and our own personal brands to really think about career growth in both, some unique ways and the ways that he's been able to navigate that and create something truly special that many of us in the greater Boston community have been privileged to be able to witness some of that work. But before I pass it over to him to introduce himself, I just want to introduce Pride in Our Workplace and who we are. We're an organization that is all about connecting LGBTQ professionals and organizations that we're all part of to think about how can we ensure our workplaces create a true sense of belonging for LGBTQ people. So we really think about how we can amplify the perspectives of LGBTQ plus employees, provide an opportunity for folks within those organizations to learn from one another and therefore create value for their businesses, whether that be through sessions like this, roundtable conversations, which we'll be having a couple of more coming up in March and April, so stay tuned, and really empowering businesses to be aligned with our community and make positive change in our community, both within their four walls and beyond. So I want to thank everyone for joining us today. I also want to thank our partners that make it possible. I know I see some familiar names on the attendee list, so I want to thank all of you for joining, and of course to all of your organizations for supporting our work. Without the contributions of our sponsors, of course, none of it would be possible. So really sincere gratitude from the PIOW team to all of you. I also want to thank and congratulate all of our community grantees. So if you are less familiar, Pride in Our Workplace last year and this year put together a community grant program to provide funding for nonprofits in our community that are doing their own amazing work and having an impact on countless lives in our community. So these are those folks. You can learn more about them. We did have a blog post on our website detailing our grant process and our selections this time. So make sure to check that out. But thank you to these organizations for both applying and also for the work that you do on behalf of our community every day. So with that, I think we have our featured speaker today, Jean Dolin. So he is a real trailblazer in our community. We really thought he'd be a fantastic person to talk about this topic today, because as we all know that there are so many different barriers to LGBTQ plus advancement in the workplace, with the potential being as the token LGBTQ employee, or feeling that you may stick out and not belong. But there's also a true opportunity for each of us, both as members of the community or as allies, to embrace identity, think about how we can reimagine careers for ourselves and others, and how we can both lean in as a member of others' networks and leverage our own networks to fulfill our career aspirations and help others fulfill theirs. So we'll end the session today with a couple of key insights that I hope our attendees are able to take with them. Make sure as well you can leave comments and chats in the chat. We always love having participation from all of you. So with that, I will pass it over to John to do an introduction to himself in his own words before we go into some Q&A.
Thank you. Thank you, Bryan. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for making the time to join for the event today. I am really excited to get to connect with all of you, although virtually, but I appreciate that you all have made the time for this. And as Bryan said, and also I really just want to start by thanking the Pride in the Workplace team for putting this event together. As smooth as it seems, it's a number of steps in the background lots of emailing and planning that has to happen in order to make this event successful. And so, gratitude to everyone at Pride in the Workplace, and thank you for having me here today. So, I really would like to say, in the context of the conversation today, leveraging network and personal brand for career growth, is that I come in today as the founder of the LGBTQ plus Museum of Art, History, and Culture, which is a newly launched organization that I founded about 2 years ago, to create space, programming, and exhibitions for the LGBTQ community here in Boston and in the Massachusetts region. But as many people in the community know, or as some of you on this webinar might know, I've done a number of different projects before launching the museum, notably Portraits of Pride, which is the large scale portraiture exhibit that features LGBTQ leaders from across the region. So, been doing that work for about 2 years. And then prior to that, I was really involved in the political campaign, nonprofit world, and really the public health world. So I guess I come from a very wide background, and honestly, I do appreciate that because it allows me to see how interconnected social issues are and how it impacts some communities versus others, or how it impacts all of us. Um, and also, I think it plays a role into why I feel like unintentionally I make the decision to really create a network that is really vast and that is across many disciplines. And that is because I understand that when it comes to social issues, whether that's LGBTQ rights, whether that's housing or food insecurity or immigration, we really need policy, we need philanthropy, we need nonprofit, we need businesses. I think we all have a role to play in building the world that we want to see. And so that's one of the reasons why I've really stretched myself in being in different rooms and trying to have an impact in different areas. So I'll stop there just so that we can have some time for a great conversation with Brian here, and then hopefully answer some of your questions as well.
Great. Thank you so much for that. I mean, it's incredible the amount of spaces that you've been able to have an impact in. And I think, and often we think about career growth or career development. Sometimes people, and myself included for a while, would just think of very linear type growth, right? It's like, oh, I'm a specialist, now I'm a senior specialist, now I'm a manager, a senior manager, the same company kind of just moving forward.
Mhm.
Um, but I think for you, you've really identified a real important need for the community, and been able to harness your passion for that into your career. And I'd like to just ask a question for you. And how did you really think about and identify that kind of need to be able to create that space for yourself, especially in your latest role?
Well, I mean, it's a combination of things. I think for me as an immigrant, right, I moved to the United States 12 years ago, um, having to really put myself to college and find resources for myself. So I became someone who a lot of people would come to for resources. So as a result of that ask, of that need, I always needed to know more what's available so that by extension, I could help more people. And that led me into the public health space. And I learned in public health, you need policy. So that led me into politics. But really, throughout COVID, originally when I was much younger, I really had a passion for storytelling, for journalism, for creativity. And throughout COVID, and really my career, my life took me on all these different paths of policy, public health, advocacy, community work, which were great. But what happened throughout COVID was that I had some time to think about what I really wanted to do, what really brought the fire in me and the passion into me. That was storytelling, and that was creativity, that was the arts. And I've always known that the arts or creativity has an ability to bring people together, to engage people on the same social issues or political issues that sometimes they would really be at war. You could really bring people into a space to experience the arts, to experience creativity, and these two different groups of people could be on very different side of an issue, but when they come in that space they are able to connect, they are able to engage. And so to me that's something I value about the arts, and I know it has a vital role in bringing people together, people of different creeds, different backgrounds, different lived experience. And so I really focus on that, and I'm utilizing that to bring people together. But I guess to answer your question more directly is, for me as an immigrant, for me as a Black man, as an openly gay man, there is a sense of living life with urgency. We don't have, I think, really for everyone, for women, I think we are at a state where anyone can relate to all the things that are happening around the world, around the country, especially with the LGBTQ community, with all the attacks. There is a sense of urgency that we need to do something now. We need to act now. And so whenever that urgency shows up, and not to say that I'm all over the place. I try to really focus and have an impact and make sure that impact is deep, and that it's really helping out folks. But when the urgency shows up, that means we have to show up and do the work, right? Obviously, I'm in the space of launching a museum in the city of Boston. It is no small work. It's a lot of work that has to go behind it. But if for any reason, some type of social service, whether it's a housing crisis that is facing our community, I will roll up my sleeve and join in that fight. Right. And so I think it's always been for me, what needs to happen now? What do we need to do now to solve our most critical issues? That has always led me into these different paths. But now I am in a space where I really feel like the odds, not feel, I know for certain that the arts can bring people together. And through the arts, we can have difficult conversations and explore solutions together, and being able to relate to one another.
Great. And I mean, I think so much of what you just spoke about is really being able to build bridges where there may often be a big gulf between folks. And I think to be able to do that, and I think for everyone to be able to do what they love effectively, that means being able to create your own personal brand that invites that type of that kind of atmosphere where people can have
Hmm.
that conversation. And kind of like to just go into that space a little bit with you on the personal brand side, because I think your network extends through the LGBTQ community, but also beyond that. I mean, and I think there is always the challenge many folks may feel on, how they present themselves to various stakeholders within their career. And I'd like to just hear from your own experience on how you found, gender presentation to have impacted your networking, and maybe how that may have evolved over time. How do you think about that for people that maybe a little hesitant or maybe nervous as they think about networking and how they show up?
Yeah, that's a very deep question. Thank you. Um, I think when I was younger, I just turned 30 last week, I think.
Happy
Um,
belated birthday, just to cut you off
thank you.
there.
Thank you. But when I was early in my 20s, I tried to give a lot of thoughts into how authentic I would show up. And I'm glad that I made the decision to show up authentically in every space. Um, so what I will say is your authenticity will open more doors for you than any other version of you ever would. So you really need to stick with that, and to not be afraid of who you are at your core, and to present yourself as you feel, whatever you feel represent the best version of who you are. That's how you should present, because that's how people will be able to connect with you. And that's how people, once people connect with you, then they bring you in, they support you, or you support them. You really need to live in your truth. um because the truth is the way, right? So when I think of how I show up in spaces, I show up as myself. There really isn't a version of Jean Dolin that is out there in the community, and there's a separate version private. It's really the same person, always thinking, always doing something, always being curious. I'm very curious about systems, about how things work, about how you go from A to B, how you resolve an issue from a policy perspective, how do you solve an issue from a business perspective. So I think when it comes to the brand is the work, right? The brain is the work. The brain is who you are. And if you do the work that you care about, it rarely feels like work. So it flows naturally. The passion sort of comes through. And although it can be pretty exhausting, but there is a difference when you do something that you're passionate about, because it almost feels as if, using the analogy of, when you have those cars that are hybrid, so as you drive you get a little bit of electricity back, and then so you end up burning less gas. So that's the way I see it. Once you have the passion, it's still exhausting because you're still working really hard, but you get a little bit of energy back. This passion keeps on fueling you to do this work. So I encourage people to be authentic in every spaces. I encourage them to be truthful with themselves, and an extension with the communities that they navigate, and also understand that the brand is your work. The brand is what you do it, how you treat people, how you connect with people, and even how you express your frustration. Because there's been some times where I've had to call and be like, listen, right? But I do that with passion, and I do it with respect, and I make my points. And so I really want people to know the impact matters. People will remember how you made them feel. People will remember how you treated them. And by extension, the community will remember that. And that becomes your brand. As much as many news articles that I've gotten, and tons of accolades, whether it's in the Globe, or GBH or Forbes magazine, there's no PR team behind me. There's no big team figuring out what you look like, what press do you get, what press you don't get. It's really been my authenticity, and the message and the work and the impact is there. And that has not always been the case, right? For like maybe for 7 or 8 years, I've done a lot of work in different spaces, and I enjoy doing those work in the background. Not ever getting any recognition for it, that's fine, because that was not the impact I needed at that time. And in fact, you may have more impact the less known you are. But now it's happening. It's just because this authenticity continues to flow, and people are connecting with it. And also, again, the art has this unique way of bringing more people in. It's not, even if we do a show that will be political, you'll be surprised. People across the political spectrum will show up for it, because that's what the art does. It really engages, it brings people together, it creates a path to connection, it creates a bridge, like you said earlier.
And I loved that piece on your work is your brand, because I think we can all be very, and there can often be like a fixation on like, how do you brand yourself? What do you need to put out there? And to your point, you align yourself to work you're passionate about, it'll honestly just fill itself. And I also loved the piece though on how you treat people. Those everyday interactions and connections have a huge impact on how we're perceived.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
As much as we'd all love a big PR team, that might be nice too. So I'm not saying if anyone in the call wants to join a PR team for me, I am happy for them.
Listen, hopefully someday. But I think honestly, what I would say, the community is my PR team, right? A lot of times people randomly email me and say, "Hey, I'm connecting you with this journalist. They're trying to write this piece, and I think you'd be a great person to give an opinion, or I think you should be featured here. Are you connecting there?" I think the community is my PR team, right? A lot of the, whether it's the awards you've seen, it's really people randomly. Some folks I may have met, I don't even remember. Some folks I may have never met, but they've just seen the work, or they've been privileged to experience one of the show, or maybe they know what I've done prior to the arts in the public health space, or what I continue to do on the different boards that I serve, and they nominate me. And so the community is my PR team. The community is my team, because they continue to show up to support in different way, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, and I mean, this was a true example of it, just for folks on the line. It was, I was like, he does amazing work. I see it out there and I know it has a positive impact. So let's reach out, right? And I think um, wanting to lift each other up in the community too and celebrate the contributions we all make is so important. Knowing the barriers that we can often face. So we talked a lot about networking and the networks and the people around us and how we um, can use that to bring people together and have a
Mhm.
conversation. And I'd like to hear from you. And networking can be scary. It can be a scary word for a lot of people. I know when I was younger, I'd be like, "Oh God, not a networking event," or "I don't want to."
Mm.
All of a sudden you're nervous. You don't even know like your first name or any hobbies when you start talking to people. And I'd like to just hear from you on, what do you think about when people get nervous about networking? And is there anything that you could share that's a little unconventional in how you've approached networking? Anything surprising or anything that you found to work really well?
Oh, I mean, my networking strategy has sort of shifted and grown over the past few years. Um, so I again, I have this deep sense of curiosity. I'm always interested in who are you, what do you do, what are you doing now, what are you doing, what do you want to do in the future. So that's when I meet people that are more like in the younger side. And when I meet people that are much older than me, I'm always interested in what does life mean? What have you done? What do you know now you didn't know when you were in your 30s? What do you know now at 70 you didn't know in your 40s? So I'm always trying to learn from people, and it has served me greatly. So the first element of my networking, I think it will serve a lot of people who are on this call, should they need it, is be curious. Be curious about people, who they are, where they are from, where they are now, and where they want to go. And then also, you can also be strategic, right? There have been times where I am going to an event, and it may be in Massachusetts, or I might have to drive to New York, but it's specifically because I know Brian is gonna be there and I need Brian. So I'm going for one person who's in a room of 500 people. I'm there for just Brian. So that is very focused, very targeted, and you can do that if you need to get access to a person, if you need an artist you want to work with, or if you need a legislator, you want to talk about a policy issue. So sometimes it can be just broad, just being curious, be in the space, learn about fellow human beings, or it could be very targeted because you need the specific person. The other thing I will also say to folks who are somewhat terrified or a little bit anxious about networking is that if you are in a room, you belong there. There's no such thing you just got to this place by accident or by some other making. You are there because you belong there. And so on the moment, understand this is your life in the moment, that you are among your fellow community leaders, you are among your fellow friends and professionals and people in your community. And you have something to contribute. People want to hear from you. People want to know why you are here and what you bring to the table. And so be generous with who you are and letting people know who you are and what you do. There is really no failing in networking, right? And that's the thing I've learned in throughout my own mentorship with my mentor, Dr. Buckley, is that the worst people can tell you is a no, right? Can you get a meeting? The worst they can say is a no. Can I get a call? The worst they can say is a no. And that rarely happens. It has never happened to me that I ask anyone to stay connected and that they say no to it. I would find that weird, but that has ever happened, and it certainly will not happen now for many reasons. And so I encourage people to just show up, to be in those spaces, to connect with people in the same way you would connect with your classmates when you were in college, or with your new colleagues when you start a new job. That's all it is really about. Except sometimes it's in a very speeding situation where you have 1 hour, it's a 2 hour event, and you try to connect with as many people as possible. But it's just a matter of to show up in the space, to be in the space, and to connect with your fellow human beings. It's not as terrifying as people think. The more you do it, the better you get at it. And you'd be surprised, people want to connect with you as well. People would like to learn about who you are and what you do. Even if you find yourself in a room full of, CEOs or, Fortune 500 company leaders, and you may just be starting your career, they need your perspectives because they want to be able to reach the audience that you represent or the market that you represent. Obviously, if you're in a different city, perfect setting to network because people want to know about where you're from. I have this advantage of not being born in the US, so I always have that to start with the conversation. The accent is always where do you come from, and that always open up the room for a wide range conversation. Name can start conversation. It's not as terrifying as it looks or as it may feel. And if it terrifies you, do it anyway. It won't kill you. Trust
I
me.
mean, I loved that point though, and you have to just be curious, right? And if you go into it as simply wanting to learn about someone or learn about their experience, to your point, what's the worst that could happen? And it's
Yeah.
really about the overcoming the imposter syndrome of feeling that you don't belong there. Or like, oh, these people are, they've accomplished X, Y, Z. Why am I here? And I loved your perspective on people want to learn from you too and your experiences, and whether it be the talent that you represent, the consumer that you represent something in that networking up
Mm-hmm.
that they want to learn from. And the last piece I loved the part on using the fact that you're not from the United States or using your accent, right? Because I think for many people within our community and other marginalized communities, they may want to suppress that and feel that's actually
Mm-hmm.
weakness. So it's very interesting about how you can leverage that as actually a strength to bring
It
to the
is.
conversation.
It is a strength. And it really goes back to that point of authenticity that we talked about earlier. I remember very, very early on, might have been when I was 22 or 23, someone had suggested, oh, maybe you should take, accent classes so you could get rid of your accent. I said, absolutely not. I love it. I've been here for 10, 12 years. If I wanted to get rid of it, there are ways to do that. But I try to hold on to my accent because it really reminds me where I'm from. It reminds me who I represent, and it reminds me whatever I do, what it means for my community of obviously all immigrants and obviously the country that I come from. So I hold on very dearly to that. Yeah, so for people who feel like they may not have power or influence into a space, you'd be surprised how much people really want to hear from you. I encourage you to do that, and you'll be surprised.
Yeah. I mean, even for me, that's very I reflect back on early in my career where, I'd do different meetings or presentations, and I would be like, oh, I don't want to have the gay sounding voice. And I'd be very nervous
Uh,
about that, thinking about,
uh,
right, like, but then I'm hearing from you on wanting to preserve your accent. And to me, that's very inspiring to hear even now. And I really hope that folks are able to take that kind of inspiration and that confidence in their own
and
work.
it's interesting you say that, Brian, because the other thing I also try to, I think about that very often because I've lived different experience that really makes me believe it is that whatever you have, whether you believe in God or if you religious, but whatever you have, it is an asset. You need to put it to use. If it's not hurting anybody, if it's not hurting you, you just feel like the world may not accept it. You're doing yourself a disservice to get rid of elements or pieces that God has given you, that the world or the universe has given you. You're taking away from yourself. Um, because at some point, it must have been very early on, right about 20 to 23, and people were, saying, oh, you could work in the LGBTQ community, you've done all this advocacy, you know how to navigate campaigns and get access to legislators and things of that nature. At some point, I remember thinking, I don't want to work in the LGBTQ community. At some point, and it must have been all the homophobia I have internalized it. So I wanted to stay away from that community because I've always felt like I'm already gay. To work in the LGBTQ community, that's so meta. Like, why would I do that? Like, I wanted to sort of stay away from it. So, but I've seen a shift after COVID, staying home, thinking about what I really wanted to do, and obviously this sort of show up, this is what you meant to do. It felt like a divine. The world has opened up in a way it never did before. The community has supported me in a way I never knew that they would, right? And so it really showed me and it conveyed to me that whatever I was suppressing was hurting me in the long run. And now that I've opened up to this community, they have embraced me and supported me. And the world has really risen up to meet me. It doesn't feel as much of a struggle to make a connection anymore. So, whether it's how one walks or how one talks, if you're trying to suppress that, you're taking away the chances of a whole group of people connecting with you just because of that element, just because of your voice, just because of your background, just because of your accent. And so I really want to stress that those pieces, those elements of who you are makes you unique. Who want to sound like a straight man anyways? You know what I mean? So you gotta hold on to those because there's like a whole big world that will connect with you just because of that. So
Yeah, no, and I mean, I love the authenticity, right? And I think for a lot of work that, especially within our community and many of our careers, requires a lot of resilience. And at the core of that resilience comes passion in being authentically connected to your work. But I do want to. So
absolutely.
one thing we've talked a lot about here is around, building our network. But now that we could say that you have a quite an expansive network. I'd love to, think about, and for those that are dialed in, to think about what are tangible ways you've leveraged your network to support your career. So, have there been
Mm.
specific asks that you've made of people? Are there certain coaching you've received from them? Like, how have you seen that networking really pay off for you in your career?
Well, so it varies. It varies because one, I think there is, to be 100% honest, you are trying to build a network of people who want to support your work. So that is very specific. And then you also want to have a community much larger than just supporting you. So those are the folks that will show up to your event, engage with your projects, just really, bringing a friend. So those folks may not be the ones you just email or you invite, like you target them with communication or specific acts, but they part of your social media. They just follow it. They part of a list of contact, whatever you have going on, you just send it to them. So it's not so much as asking everyone for something so specific, but for me it's been letting them show up with how they want to support, right? Obviously, with the museum being in the works, and there's a lot we're going to be announcing in the next few months. When I reach out to people and say, I would love to talk to you about the museum, a lot of people think, oh my God, he wants money. Yes, I do want money for the museum, of course. But what I really want is for them to see this mission, see this vision, and see some of the programmings the board and I have been thinking about and give us their feedbacks, ask us questions, criticize the vision, criticize, scrutinize it. Give me all the bad things you see so that we can address them, right? Obviously, in the next few months, we're going to be doing a feasibility study for the museum, both facility and programs. And the more questions we have from the community, the more robust the feasibility study will be. And then we'll be able to address those questions. And so I'm asking a lot of people, just give me your questions, give me your ideas. What are we not thinking about? What are we leaving out? Are we doing this too much? Are we not doing enough of this? So I ask different people for different things. Some of them I just ask questions. Some of them I ask for an introduction. Some of them I ask for space. Some of them I ask for money. It really varies. And so you will be able, I think anyone who has a project specific will be able to determine who can support them where, but also approach everything with an open mind. You know that saying, ask for money, get advice, and ask for advice and get money is true across the board. It is so true. I've reached out to people and say, I really just want to get your thoughts. They're like, yeah, we will make a gift soon, and this is it. Or when you ask people for a gift and then they take you to 5 different meetings and conversation, they introduce you to 10 different people, which is great because we need to expand the network of not just me, but the museum. Honestly, what I'm doing and ultimately what the goal is to take everything I have, every resources, every friendship, every connection, and make sure they become part of the support system for the institution, for the museum. That is the goal, and everyone knows that. Oh, my family members know it, my friends know it, close friends, friends that are in the more outside space of my life. Everyone knows that. Um, so you can make specific asks, but go with it with an open mind. Go to it with an open mind. Um, and I think the more clear you become about the vision, the easier it is for you. I have found that not everyone has time to help you answer questions or to help you figure out where you should go. But if you know where you're going, they can point you to the right direction. Think of it, if you at an airport, you honestly just want to get a taxi. Even if you don't speak English, you ask someone taxi, everyone will point that way. Or they tell you upstairs or downstairs. That's easy. But if you stop someone, you tell them, where should I go? Nobody knows what you're talking about. You want to go to a gate, you need a restroom, you need a taxi. So the more clarity you can have about where you want to go, the easier it is for the community to point you in the right direction because you've made it clear this is my final destination and this is where I want to go. So I think it really starts with you. Make specific acts of you, and once you have those points clarified, clear vision, clear mission, then the community will show up and they will guide you in the right direction. So that has been my experience, and I think it can be sort of universal.
Yeah. I mean, that's a really great example and a nice like analogy there where sometimes you can show up to with your network and say, help me with my career. And everyone's, well, what do you need help with?
Right.
That's not very confused. Like, do you need help on, finding your passions? Do you need help with the promotion? What do you need help with? But to your point, if you say, I want to get from point A to point B, this is what I need. Can you help guide me? Now your network can actually lean in. So I love.
Correct.
Well, thank you with that. And I know we've already over 40 minutes chatting, and time
Oh
flies.
wow.
I
It
know.
felt like 20.
I know. So I do want to leave some chance for questions at the end, but we've talked about a lot today. And I always like leaving people with just one or two like key takeaways. So, if there were things that you would tell folks on the line to do today, to start with their networks or think about how they're showing up, what would be those one or two like, like take a few notes and take this from the session today
Mm,
you would wanna leave with folks?
that's hard because everybody is so different and everybody is at different spaces, of their lives and of their careers. But I think the number one would be to be curious. The more curious you are, because remember what curiosity does, you're not sitting with the question, you're trying to get the answer. And so that's why I lead with that. The moment you become curious about people, you're going to try to connect with people. The moment you're curious about system, you're going to try to engage with people who work within that system, within that space. And so I lead with that. Be curious and be open-minded. Open-minded in the sense of you never know what you will find with your question. You may think Brian is the best person to help you with this career move, with this, promotion, and it turns out Brian has to connect you with someone else. So be open-minded that when Brian says no, I can't or I don't know, be open-minded enough to ask, is there someone else you can connect me with? Is there another time we can connect? Is there another company or another career path I should be thinking about? So be open-minded. And then third one, if I could offer a third, is to remember who you are. You know who you are. You know everything you've been through. You know what it was like to start on this path you on. You know what it was like to put yourself to college. You know what it was like to move from another city to come to go to another one. You know everything you've been through. So believe in yourself that you're resilient enough, that you're brave enough for the next move, that you're brave enough to make a career shift. you brave enough to change company, or that you're brave enough to go ask for that promotion. So be curious, be open-minded, and be brave.
Thank you. That was I was going to summarize what we but that was actually a beautiful summary there. So you already took out one of my bullet point. No, I'm kidding. But I just want to. I did see a few things came in that I'll get to, but I just want to just thank you for your own authenticity today, your willingness to share your experiences and share your insights with folks. I do see we saw someone submit a comment here that that they really did struggle with networking.
Mm,
And today's session taught them something what they didn't know, and particularly the piece that the worst response they can get is a no. So they said thank you.
that's
Um,
it. No, very welcome.
and then the next question I had for you actually is, and this came from Matthew, as a person who recently had a birthday, how do you think about managing your personal brand as you change, whether it be a function of age, growth, circumstance,
Mm.
etc.?
I've been thinking about it in a way. I want to open up a little bit more. I think I want to let the public in a little bit more. Obviously, prior to the LGBTQ Museum or Portraits of Pride, everything I did was in the background, and I really enjoy that because it allowed me to move somewhat freely. But there were some barriers. There were some I wasn't connecting to the community in a way. Now that's happening, I think it is worth giving some thought into letting the community in about the process, right? When it comes to exhibits, when it comes to festivals or events or partnership or things I do with other museum or specifically with the LGBTQ museum, I've been thinking, could I open it up to the public on social media? Could I let them know, hey, we have this exhibit in mind. What should it look like? What scale? Where should it be? That sort of thing. If I, the moment I have an idea, for instance, the LGBTQ museum, we are working on an LGBTQ festival, a 3-day event across the city. Perhaps we should open that up, letting the public know about it so we build it with the community instead of cooking it on our own and then feed it to the community. So that's one way I've been thinking about the brand. Not so much me as a person, but the museum as a whole. So I've been thinking about that a little bit differently to share my thoughts, my processes, my frustration a little bit more. Because I think when I share it even privately, or in a room, the community supports me and they show up for me. So I've been thinking about what would that look like if I did it more in a more public setting. So I've been giving some thought. We'll see how it goes in a few months. Thank you,
But
Matthew.
But I do love that piece on, our own personal brand. It doesn't have to be somewhere that we're cultivating and ourselves in our kitchen, right? It's something where you can ask folks and lean on your network that does exist to think about how are you being perceived? Are there
Yeah,
that, you can learn from people? And that's a great way to keep thinking how it can evolve too over time.
yeah, yeah.
Great, and I think that was unless Carly, I know Carly, our guru, who leads all of our programming, is also on the call with us, Carly Davis. I don't see any other questions, so it feels like we may be in a good spot here, just to confirm.
Yeah, I think we got everything. This was such a great conversation. I thought I knew what it was going to be going into it, and I feel like it delivered on everything and more. And again, like I'm feeling inspired. Time to go find
Mm.
a networking event if anyone's out in LA and knows one. I'm remote from here, so it's time to plug in to the West Coast community in addition to the Boston community.
Mhm.
But no, all I can let you go ahead and wrap up. Everyone can have a bit more of their days back. Unless again, if anyone has any last minute questions, jump in, throw them our way. And if you have any questions after we wrap up that come to mind, our inbox is open, info@piow.org. And I'll be on the lookout if anything else comes in. But I'll hand it back over to Brian for now.
Great, and we did get one question from Gavin asking why you are so fantastic. So thank you. Very sweet.
I don't know. God's blessing. God's blessing. God's blessing. Why am I so fantastic? I mean, to be honest, I'm not fantastic every day. I mean, as all of you who work know, there are tough days. There are days where you don't get the answers that you want. There are days where you really just, as a person, feel overwhelmed. So I have those days as well. I don't have it all together. And to kind of quickly go back on the opening a little bit more, honestly, I think there's a little bit of a fear that you can't open halfway. Once you open, you let people in, they really in. So that means they will get to see not just your successes, but also your failure. And I'm not sure I'm in that space yet where I want the public to see me failing. Um, but I don't think it's gonna happen, honestly, whether it's a project related, because I think whatever we call failure is really life redirecting you in the right path. It's been truth for me. There are things I wanted to do a couple years before COVID that didn't work, and now I'm glad they didn't, because life has really put me in a space where I feel much more joyful and energized to do this work of the museum. So to sort of go back, yes, I'm fantastic. Thank you, Jesus, and thanks to my community, my family, and friends who allow that to happen. But I'm not fantastic every day. And if I were to let the public in a little bit more, I think they will get to see that. But we'll see how it goes. But thank you, Gavin.
But I will say the true piece there that you were alluding to is, sometimes when you need your network most is when you're falling or challenged, right? Or facing something that's hard. And that's when
Right.
really when we think about when we want to reach out to our network and maybe have specific asks, it can often be when we're facing hardship. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
so I just want to thank you one more time for joining us. I want to thank everyone that joined our call today. I want to also thank once more all of our partners and our sponsors that make things like this possible. We will have blog posts and all those type of content that follow our sessions rolling out over the next couple of months. So keep an eye out for that. In addition, we'll be having more roundtables for our sponsors coming up in March and April that will focus on both leveraging our internal networks, so our senior leadership teams, our employee resource networks, to maximize our impact. And you will see PIOW out in the wild at some external networking events in our community too, to really practice what we're preaching today.
Awesome. Well, I
Thank
just
you.
want to take some time to thank you, Bryan, for moderating this conversation. It was just a joy chatting with you. We should do this more often. It's
Yes.
fun. I love it. Thank you so much. And thank you to everyone who joined today.
And I also want to give the opportunity, because there was one last question. How can
Ooh.
people learn more about the museum, support it financially, support it socially, get involved? Do your plugs. Go for it.
What thank you. See, I've even forgot about that. We got so excited talking.
No.
Well, you can go on the museum website now, blgbtqm.org. You can read a little bit more, you can donate. We appreciate the support. Over the next few months, there's gonna be a bigger sort of rolling out of the museum, really sharing a little bit more. You'll see a better version, a fantastic website coming out soon, that is in the works. And then you start seeing our exhibitions, advertising sort of popping everywhere, and you might have seen on the Pride in the Workplace platform. So expecting, just stay in tune with this community here, and then you get to hear about all of it. But for now, you can go on our website, blgbtqm.org, and you can learn a little bit more. You can reach out. There'll be people answering, or I might be answering any questions you have, or ideas you have, suggestions you have, and you can donate as well.
Beautiful. Great. And thank you, Carly, for putting this up so you can join our mailing list, follow us on social media, keep an eye on our website. And of course, as he mentioned, we will also share information about the museum as well as that progresses. But once more, thank you all. And we look forward to seeing you at our upcoming upcoming engagements, and feel free to reach out to us at info@piow.org if you have any outstanding questions. Thanks, everyone.